I'm not going to lie to you, this isn't going to be a 5-minute video. If you want to see, and in this video I'm going to show you how you do this rusty wall effect. If you want to see this video on how to do a complete start to finish of a rusty wall with proper in-depth tips, tricks of the trade of me telling you how to do it, stay tuned, because this is the end result. To get to the end result, you'll have to watch all the video. Morning everybody, followers of the channel. This is Phil Beckwith, the professional painter and decorator, with an exciting, really exciting video today. We're going to address this blue wall. It's the feature wall in the front entrance on the flat renovation. Now, if you watch previous videos on this, wasn't happy with the colouring. We went for the blue. It's all in that video there. And over the last few days, because these videos have all been put together over 3 or 4 days, and going forward there'll be a couple more days with it as well, but I wasn't happy with the blue. Probably last video you've seen, I've sprayed the Farron Ball number 17 that was mixed to Everall Aqua 40. The colour is light grey. Doesn't look like grey. And I've also done the ceiling again, which is the Polish paint, which is the Jeger Millennium, what do they call it, anti-reflex white. Love that, it's really good paint, so watch that video. But today I'm back with a Polish paint. I say a Polish paint, I'm going to give a shout out to Patryk again at Iconic Walls. There's no sponsorship, there's no endorsement, there's no money changed hands. You see the paper motion in the corner, mainly because I do have the Amazon shop front now, so there are things that you could probably purchase, and I do get a small percentage of a commission if anybody buys anything. But on this video, I'm actually, no money's changed hands, nobody's given me anything other than Patryk has sent me the products to try. So I'm going to sit down and I'll just talk you through what we're going to do with this wall, because this wall is going to have a decorative paint effect very similar to a Venetian plaster, a polished plaster. It's going to be a rusty effect. So let me tell you what the products are to do it. Right, so let's get on. Right, so you put the primer on your wall and you apply it by a roller. Whether you could brush it, I'm not sure. We will find out when I actually do it. So you apply the primer. Now this needs, let's give it 4 hours before it's dry. Now once you've got a dry surface for that primer, I'll show you what it is there. Focus. Once that's on, I can't read the back of the tin because it's all in Polish. So there's no point me saying it's all Greek to me. It's actually all Polish. I can actually see the pictures which show you rolling it, waiting 4 hours, then washing your roller out, and then it does about 10 square metres, 10 metres square. Right, let's get on, come on, we've got time, there's no time. Right, so your primer goes on. Once that's dry, your next product to put on, which is actually a bit of a standalone product that you could, if you wanted, leave it at this. You apply the Oxyd. Now you'll see how I do this. Very much like you do a Venetian plaster, you apply this, which is like a thickish paint, with a finishing trowel. Very much like polished plaster, when we do polished plaster. So once that's on, that needs 8 hours to dry. Once that's dried, are you following me? I'll do a list at the end. Once that's dried, 8 hours. Get that out of the way. You come with an activator. Now you spray this onto your wall surface, onto that Oxyd. Now once you spray this on, the more you put on, the more the effect will show. This is the stuff that will create the rust effect. Now once you start spraying this on, and it's like a garden mister, you know, when I'm cleaning my car and I spray stuff, I use something like this. Well, not to make it rusty. Your rust will start forming in 2 to 8 hours. But it's dry, totally dry, give it 12 hours. So you can hear by what I'm saying, 4 hours here, 8 hours there, 12 hours here. This isn't a quick process. This is going to be done over a weekend for me. So Yeah, the wife's not going to be very happy because I'm going to be spending all my time doing a feature wall. Never mind. Keeps me away from the kids. Right, so you get an effect on its own with this, but when you spray it on, to get I'll say an evened effect, you get a brush. Let me just get this out of the packet, and you brush that sprayed liquid only lightly, just level it out. So you spray this onto the Oxyd. Once it's on, do an area at a time and brush it down. So you spray on, you'll see when I do the video, spray on and then just brush it, just verticals. You don't need to crows, just verticals with the tips of the bristles. Just spread that out with that. Once that's dry, because you've waited your 12 hours, I'm going to move this to this side. We've got the Oxyd 3D. Now the Oxyd 3D, it's a bit of thick. Oh, I can get it out. It's a bit more thicker product, and you will be putting this on with a sponge. And I've just got, for the example, this is just a cheap sponge from Wix, the decorator sponge if you want to call it. Those that do decorating and particularly wallpaper hanging, it's not too bad a sponge for that. You apply this and put it in patches, random, a bit like you're doing an effect with Artex. Not all over the surface, just dab it on, and then once you've dabbed it on, get your trowel again and just skim over it to flatten it off. Just skim it out. You'll see when I'm doing it. It's probably sounding more complicated than it needs to be. Skim over certain areas, and you will be leaving the background also showing through, which is pre-rusted. You've already got that rusting. So certain areas will be showing through what you've done with the Oxyd, but now you put in the 3D Oxyd, which is be a texture over the surface. Once that's dry, and this is 4 hours, are you with me? Are you still with me? This is 4 hours to dry. Put that down there. Go with your sprayer again, your activator, tip it into a little bucket or something like that, get your sponge, soak it in, not so it's drenched, and the highlighted relief that you've made with your trowel and the Oxyd 3D, just dab it on. You'll get the idea when you see me doing it, dabbing it on, because that will put a rust effect onto that Oxyd 3D. Sounds simple, doesn't it? The more effect you want of rust, the more you can apply, either at the Oxyd level, when you've just put the Oxyd on the wall, spray it, see what you think, want to add a bit more you can do, and the same principle with the Oxyd 3D. Once you've got it on and you've done your bit of sponging, you could even squirt it onto there, can't you? Sponge it over to the highlighted relief. If you're not happy with how the effect is, once you start seeing it rusting, you can add a bit more. Right, once you've done all that and you've left it to dry for another 12 hours, how many days work's this going to be? Another 12 hours, you can go over it with the, there you go, the protector. There you go, I'll focus. This is touch dry in 4 hours. Again, you can apply it by roller. You could, to be fair, small areas you'll probably get away with a brush. So I've explained what the products are. I'm going to enjoy doing this because polished plaster is quite a thing at the moment, and doing rusty wall effects, and there's other products that Patryk's going to let me try as well. I like doing this sort of thing. This is my core passion, decorative finishes. I told you about this before I did all this at college. Right, so without further ado, I'm going to sit here, go like that in a minute, and I will get that coated out. So next time you'll see this room, that will be coated out with primer, and we'll be leaving it for 4 hours before we start putting the Oxyd on. So bear with me, I'm going to go like that and it's going to be done. And just like that, it's all been done. In this easier way of doing videos, just click your fingers and I've done it. Right, that went on quite nicely. I cut in with a, you're going to ask me, this is an Arrowworthy Classic 2.5 inch, lovely brush these are. I like these, and I also like the Monarch Advanced range, very similar brushes, very similar sort of bristle as well. Cut in lovely, and that roller that Patryk supplied to me with, I don't know, it's probably about a 5, might be a 10mm, is that, a 10mm nap. That's applied it quite well. I wasn't going to expect that to cover because it's not that sort of paint. This is more of a base coat primer, as it says, because it's a primer. Very much like when you used to do Artex and you used to get an Artex sealer. It used to seal the surface to allow, and this is what primers and undercoats are for, it's to allow the top coats to have a clean sound base to work on. That does its job over whatever it needs to go over, ready for you. Well, we're going to go over with the Oxyd. So that's drying nicely. It says 4 hours. I've got stuff to do, so I can be back just in about 4 hours time, and we'll start with this. But so far so good. I'm pleased. Thank you very much, Patryk. It's lovely to try new products. Right, my lovelies, that's now dry, and it's interesting. I'm still on the same day. I'm just now in the afternoon. That is very gritty. I think the whole reason of it being applied by a roller is so you get an even grittiness. Because that wall was very smooth because I'd sanded it down prior to actually applying that. But we're ready to put the Oxyd on now. Now, I'm giving now. Right. The Oxyd. If you can see this, I'll just drop you down. The consistency of that is like a thick, it's like a thick paint or a very thin mix of Artex. I have gave it a mix up just with my little mixing stick, and it does feel, it's got a sandy gritty feel to it. Not quite like a textured masonry paint, but there obviously is an element of something in there that is gritty. I don't know what is in it. I can't read the back. It actually might say don't mix, but there's probably things in there that activate when you spray it, clearly. Activate when you spray it with the activator. Now, are there little iron filings in it? I don't know. But what, oh dear, took a breath of that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to work out this tub. I have got a filling knife with me in case I find it easier to scoop a bit out. And I've also got, I don't know whether you use these or you know what they are. Do you know what one of those is? We call it a spoon. Now we use these for fine filling. You know, when we put decorative coving up, or this coving or anything that just wants, that's normally quite sharp. Filling into corners and angles. I've just got this out and I've cleaned it down, sanded it down so it's a nice clean surface. I've got this just in case I need to go into those corners there and bring it out, because the trowel is a bit rounded. Now bear with me on this. I'm going to start on that corner there. You smear it on. You don't need to have it thick. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit textured, i.e. trowel marks, because what you're going to do is get it as smooth as you possibly can with this. Now hopefully this will go on nice and evenly onto that gritty surface, and probably that's why it's gritty, to help this adhere to it. But remember, I'll be coming back to this tomorrow because this needs at least 8 hours to dry. So I'll get it done in the next whatever, we'll see. And tomorrow will be the using the atomizer. So let's see how we go. You might find a fast forward this so I'm not boring you too much. But there again, you might be very interested in seeing Oxyd being applied. Doesn't matter where you start, so I might just start here and work into the corner. I've still got my tape across the top edge. I've not taped up there where I've got the green, because if I do go onto it slightly, I will just touch it in back with the Optima 5. Do you know what? It's a bit rude to say it, but my bum was twitching like a rabbit's nose on that. Literally. I hate it. You know, the last dregs have just finished me that off. That was touch and go. There was no way I've got enough for if I wanted to do those other walls, like round there. So it's a good job it's only a feature wall. Literally nothing. Scrape the bottom of the barrel. Gone. Now, that only goes on really thin. If you see how I did it, I know it was probably fast forwarded up. Use the edge of your trowel to smear it across. Now, because that's a textured surface that I was going over, because that tub down, it was actually giving it like a corrugated finish to it, which isn't right, is it? But this is why you've got a plasterer's finishing trowel. What you do, I don't know whether I can do it now because it's going off. You put it on flat on the surface. Literally, it's flat on the surface, not by the edge. And once it's on the flat of the surface, then polish it out, literally. And that will spread it and give you, and I don't know whether you can see it. Can you see it gives you a slight texture, but it is a flat texture. That's a bit wrong to say that. It's a texture, but it's flat. What I'm saying is it's flat texture as in it's not corrugated. So to me, this is like, used to call it, is it broken leather? Spanish, on the Artex, when you used to just apply it by a brush. I didn't like Artex, but you can just see it. It's like a bad plastering job, to be honest. But I'm quite happy how it is. The only thing that I'm a bit unsure how you're going to do it any neater is that top edge. Don't look too bad from here, but I don't know how you get it straighter. I don't know whether you tape would help and go up onto the tape. I'm not too sure. Not going to be too worried about that, because what I'll do, I'll neaten it up with some of the other Oxyd 3D, because I'm not going to be using all of that tub. I could probably just use a little bit of a brush and just brush it across that edge just to neaten it all up, so I'm not too worried about that. But this, as I said, needs 8 hours, so I'll be back tomorrow morning and we'll get some of the spray stuff on to see what it's like with a rust effect. But so far so good, other than I thought I was going to run out of stuff, and literally I was taking out whatever was in the bottom. So going forward, if I was doing this again, I'd make sure I'd got enough of that, because as you can see, this isn't particularly a big wall that I've done. Right, see you tomorrow. Morning everybody, today's the day. I'm not saying I've had a sleepless night, but that 8 hours drying, good night's sleep, come back in the morning, and away we go. Now, I'm not a bit of a wuss or anything, but that trowel, I'm not used to manual work, am I? Got a blinking blister, look at that. Anyway, that's gone on, and it's a bit of a textured surface. Let's just move you a bit closer. It's a bit of a textured surface. I can just see, I don't know whether you can, that primer is just grinning through that top, well, the top coat of that, the Oxyd. Now, you know, I was probably pushing it a little bit more, and by the end of this video I'm going to actually measure up what area this is for how far that went, because this says, I can't read Polish, give or take 6 square meters squared, however you want to do it. So that's 1 litre. Next time round I'd probably be ordering 2 just to make sure I've got enough to get it covering a little bit thicker. But up and down like a bobbin. Troweling it with a flat trowel gives you a nice swirl texture. You know what I mean when you're using it. But today what we're going to do, we're going to get some of the Oxyd activator, Polish. It's the activator to get this looking like a rusty wall. Now you can stop at that, put this on, let it dry, and it's 12 hours for this to dry, 2 to 8 hours for the rust effect to appear. But you can stop at that if you just want a rusty wall. We don't want a rusty wall, we want a textured 3D rusty wall, which means I'll be back tomorrow, after that's dried after 12 hours, to put some texture on it. Yeah. Never mind, we'll talk about that tomorrow. So what I'm going to do, I've got a piece of card just to protect. I've got a piece of card to protect the top edge of the ceiling so I'm not spraying onto the ceiling. I can touch it up. And I've also, when I left last night, I just took off the tapes. I took off the tapes around the top so nothing was going to set up. And then I've retaped it and put some more paper bagging on, and just around the doors there you can see that. So just, well, we'll see. Now I'm hoping I can try and neaten that top edge up, possibly with the textured finish. I might just get a little brush and just touch it in to neaten it up. Failing that, I've got to just go around with a brush full just to neaten that edge up. If you've used this sort of product before, what do you do when you're coming up against ceilings? Tell me. I'll do what I can to get it as neat as possible. The corners, up there, I'll be able to touch in with the Optiva 5, I'm not worried about that. But we'll see how we go. Now, I told you yesterday when we spoke about it, you spray this on, you get the brush, and with the tips of the bristles of the brush, I've not washed it out, don't want to put any contaminants or water in it. Just literally with the tips, you just brush it down. Not lay it off, just brush it down. Brush it up, brush it down. Vertical. That will encourage the rust to form. So shall we get it So shall we get it started? I'm just trying to move you into a nice position. Let's go with that and let's see how we let's see how we go. Self-explanatory. Don't forget you turn the end cap, whether you want it streaming or whether you want it misting. I'm going to go with, let's just see. Right, sprays quite well. So let's do an area, and then we will start to brush it down. The more you put on, the more you're going to get the rust forming. Just lightly, tips of the bristles, and just go over that little area that you've done. Well, that's certainly different. You just got to be a little bit careful because it can spray quite mad. I've got, let's call it overspray. There's a little bit of overspray on the ceiling, but as I say, I'm going to address that when we've finished. Spray it on, brush it out. I'm just going to open the window and let a bit of air in, get it drying off. And just lay it off top to bottom. If you can see some areas that have got a few little spots on it, don't worry about that, because if it's going to rust, and I've not seen it firsthand, if you've got certain areas that are like bubbles and they start rusting, that's going to add to the effect surely. But I'm hoping that's going to actually be alright. 2 to 8 hours for this rust to start forming. And as you could see, I went over certain areas that they look drier, so I thought I'll add a little bit more to that. But what I'll do, I'll give it a few hours, I'll see what it's looking like, and if I think that there's areas that just want a little bit more adding to it, I will do. But don't forget, I will be putting a 3D texture over it, so if there is areas that haven't got anything on, I'm not going to worry, because that's where the 3D texture could be. But so far, it's not looking bad. Let's see if I can get you. Can you see? Can you see that texture to it? Tell you what, I'll come back to you in a good number of hours and let's see what it's looking like. So far so good. I'm glad I put the tape round just to protect the panelling. I don't know what's in this. It's obviously something to aggravate. Must be an iron filing or something in there, but I'm not sure. But I'll see you later on. Can you see it? It's been about an hour and a half and I've been elsewhere, come back, and it's starting to form nicely. So I've just spritzed it with the sprayer, and I'm just going to do a light tip lay off what I've spritzed all over the surface, and we'll see what that's like. Catch you later. Morning everybody, we're now on to, shall we call it day 3. Now yesterday you saw me applying, squirty, laying it off with a brush, and I would say within the hour to 2 hours that was starting to take effect. Now over the course of the day, because it says 2 to 8 hours, I told you all this, I did actually add a little bit more effect, because you could add more for a more stunning effect. And do you know what? I'm blown away by it. At this stage, if you wanted, you could leave it at that and just put the protective varnish coating that you get with the kit. But we don't want to do that. We want to go to the next level, and this is the next level of the decorative treatments course with Phil Beckwith, the professional painter and decorator. We're going to put the Oxyd 3D on now. Now, this stuff, when you open the lid, mix it up, because it's settled. It's very much consistency is like a fine textured masonry paint. So all the little granules of gritty stuff have all settled. So give it a mix up, don't whip it up, don't need an electrical, mechanical mixing stick or anything, just carefully mix it up. And I know some people do the shaky. Do you know what? That don't mix paint properly. Assure me, you'll have that instance where you come to the paint and you've not mixed it properly because it's still stuck to the bottom. You need a proper mixing stick, and not a cane. It's got to be a flat mixing stick. Just ask yourself, why do they sell you a mixing stick that's like a flat stick? They don't sell you a tube or a cane, do they? Anyway, I digress. Mix that up, and the principle of this is you apply it with a sponge. Now, I got the big sponge out thinking I might use that, but looking at this stuff in the tub, the Oxyd 3D, I'm going to revert back to the pan scourers sort of sponges, because I can get it in the tub a lot easier. I may use the bigger sponge when it comes to actually putting the activator on this textured relief. We'll see. It's a bit trial and error. But apply this, and it takes 4 hours to dry. So after 4 hours, and I'm hoping, because I'm early morning, I'm after lunchtime, I might be able to get some of the activator actually on this stuff to make this rust as well. So you don't re-rust this, you start rusting this by applying the activator via a sponge or by a sponge. So what's the principle of this? Apply it, put it any which way you can. Once you've got it on, put it on quite thickly, get your plasterer's trowel and then smooth it out. And that's what you've got to do to all of this surface, smooth it out. So I just want to show you something else in a minute. Just want to show you something else. What I want to show you is this. Now, I wasn't too happy how these edges were, and you can just, prime example of this, I've actually taped it with a delicate purple tape around the top and down these sides just there. Now you can just see white showing because the plastering's not brilliant, and probably I should have probably taped that edge all the way around, but I didn't know how bad the edge was, and also what the actual original Oxyd was like to apply when I needed to get it on. But what I've done, I've taped it, and I'm hoping that with the sponge I can just try and lose that white edge. I'm also hoping that when I take that tape off, if there's any touching up on the ceiling or actually on the green just there, I'll be able to touch that in anyway a lot neater. But what I'm going to do is when I come up to that tape, obviously get it up as close as I can, I'm going to use my brush, and I don't know whether anybody's tried any of these, the Two Fussy Blokes brushes. Let's just put it this way, I've found a use for it. I'm going to just use the tips, because these tips go very, can you see that, very fine. There's not much thickness to the filling of the, yeah, I'm not too impressed. I can just scrub it into those bits of edges there. I'll just show you, just to lose that white edge, and that's what I'm going to do. I might be able to do it with the trowel and sponge, we'll see. But let me crack on, let's see what I can do with this. I'll start just in the middle, it doesn't matter where you start. But I'm really loving this effect. All mixed up. It's like a, you can see, it's like a thick pasty stuff. Right, I'm just going to get the sponge primed in. Let's start dabbing it on. Look where your patterns are, it doesn't matter where you really go with it. Get some on. And put it on quite thickly because it is a 3D effect. Flatter the trowel, don't try and use the edge. You're not trying to spread it out, you're just trying to flatten it and smooth it, so flat. Do you know what, I'm liking it, I'm really liking it. This is actually giving you the 3D thickness over this surface now. And I've got a good feeling that I'm going to be able to lose that white edge up at the top. And again, it's one of these things that you can put a bit on, see what you think, and then come back to it and add a bit more. As long as you don't run out of this litre, right, it's classed as a litre, it's 1 kg. Is it 1 kilogram? I think so, tub. Yeah, I can lose that edge up at the top, so I'm quite happy with that. I probably don't need the brush. It's actually not bad just to add a little bit extra if you need it. Yeah, I probably will stick with that. Alright, let me crack on. Let's fast forward it and see what it's like at the end. Do you know what? I'm quite happy with that. I'm not quite happy, I'm very happy. Very happy. You can see, it's one of those things, let me just take you off the camera. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. You can see, as I've done it, I've gone heavier in some parts than others. I still want to let a little bit of the rust of the background come through. Don't forget, this 3D Oxyd that I've put on will also be rusting when I put that activator on it. So when we come a bit later on, and I'm going to give it 4 hours, I'm going to get these Veluxes open just there. It'll probably be a bit less than 4 hours. We can actually get some of the activator on and see what it's like, and that takes 12 hours. It's 2 to 8 hours for the actual stuff to activate and work, as you saw with yesterday's video, or all in today's. But this will then also react and go rusty. So as it's drying now, it's like a rusty effect. I'm not really liking it. Now, tips of the trade. It's a bit like back in the day when I was teaching marbling at college. When you're doing these sorts of patterns, I'll call it a pattern, you don't want it regimented. You want it randomed. But don't do it random. They look like spiders have walked over it and it's gone into crisscrosses. That's why you probably saw me starting one end, then I went down to another, then I went down to there. So I wasn't going from one side, because this is the biggest fail of a DIY amateur. They start one side of a room, finish there, and the strength of whatever they've done, whether it be a colour wash, whether it be a sponging effect, bagging effect, rotate it so you're not in one spot. I mean, rag rolling used to do one wall at a time and go from one wall to the opposite wall and rotate it that way. Don't start going clockwise or anti-clockwise around a room. And it's the similar sort of thing with this. Do it and random yourself where you're going to be doing it. And when you're applying it by that sponge effect, instead of just dobbing it on, rotate the sponge at the same time so it's not giving that block. That makes sense. So let's come back this side. So at the moment it's not looking anything, but I can assure you it will look something, and I'm going to come back probably in about an hour's time, see what it's like. If I need to add any more, I will do, but I think I've actually got enough on here. I'm quite happy with what's on it. Loving it, loving it. Top edge was fine. I did use the brush just to get a little bit in, but the sponge also helped. So fingers crossed that will give me a bit sharper edge, and I'll just have to neaten up with some paint at the end. I will say schoolboy error. It's probably not so much that, it's probably trial and error. You would probably take that off first thing before you start the job, but we're experimenting. This is what it's all about, experimenting. So I'm catching a bit, and let's see what we like. We'll come back. Now that 3D Oxyd, it's 4 hours. We've actually been just over 5. So what we're going to do now is actually rust that 3D effect. Now I've got my wick sponge. All I've done is literally cut it in half. And this stuff, instead of spraying it on and spritzing it, what I've done, I put it in my little roller tray, and what I plan to do is just dip it in like so, and now so what I'm doing is just dabbing it onto there so I'm not getting too much on. And now what you're going to do is go over your highlighted relief. It doesn't matter if you get any on the stuff you did the day before. So start going around all of it and just dabbing it on in sections. And again, like I said, rotate your hand, wrist, so you're not putting it on too regimented. You see? I hope you could see on that fast forwarded clip what I was doing. You know where to apply this stuff because the 3D Oxyd is actually a brighter orange colour, and that's where you really want to be applying this by the sponge. Now I've virtually gone over where I wanted to go over. There's certain areas that I'm just going to fill in just to add a little bit more. I'd actually say there's no right or wrong way of doing this. Just have a look at it. I can actually just see now some of this stuff working and going a bit rusty. But your relief of the 3D Oxyd that you've applied, that is the parts that you want to start rusting. So that is where I'm just trying to catch any areas now that I possibly might have missed. Only has to be light, and we'll see how we go with that. What you don't want to be doing is just coating up the whole wall with the solution. You want to have a little bit of some of the original still showing through. So anyway you can see a little bit more brighter orange, just gently dab them over. And I'm just going to do that now. So I'll catch you later. I've just finished off with a bit more activator on there. You could see the more oranger surface of the 3D that I applied, the 3D Oxyd. So I've just gone over with a bit more on my sponge and just virtually caught all those areas now. So I'm happy with that. That's been done about 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes. So I'm going to leave that now, and I'm going to come back tomorrow and I'm going to put the protective varnish coat over it. It's a matte finish. Now this, like the last time the activator was used, 2 to 8 hours you'll see it working. I'm seeing it working already. Oh, I like it. I like it. Not a lot, but I like it. Well, I do like it a lot. But if you go back, because this is quite a lengthy video, I wanted to measure up. Now this wall measured up 3.8 from down there to up here, 3.8 by 1.27. Now if you divide that to find out what your surface area is, you've got a 4.8. Now that kit for putting that original Oxyd on that I virtually ran out of, it was scraping the bottom of the barrel, should be doing about 6. So what did I do wrong? Did I trowel it on wrong, or is there another way of doing it? I don't know. Please tell me if you know how to do better troweling than me. But I did get it as a thin layer. And if you remember, because I'll just recap on it, remember when I put that base coat on, that base coat, that white, was showing through that Oxyd, and I did wonder whether it was going on thick enough or whether you needed to literally obliterate the white. It doesn't actually matter, does it? Because by the time you've got all this effect on, I'm not seeing... See it, it's working. I'm not seeing any, that looks brilliant. I'm not seeing anything bleeding through that, if that's the right word to say, bleeding through it. Just as a side note as well, you might want to wear gloves. It is a bit of an irritant, bit of an acid. I'll say acid, that's probably a little bit too strong, but it is a strong, just say corrosive on it. Don't wash it down the sink or anything like that. I've washed my hands, but this sponge that I've used, I've binned. I put it in the bin. So let that do its thing, and I will see you tomorrow when I put a varnish coat on. I won't film too much of the varnishing, but we'll have a conclusion of it because the varnish will dry quick. Very true to my word. You've just seen me do a little bit of varnishing and we're on the next day, so I'm going to actually say this is 4 days in from when I originally first started, albeit that the varnishing of this, what does it take, 10 minutes. Use the little roller that Patryk supplied and I'm blown away by it. I'm literally blown away by it. I don't know what I can say about it. I've been really impressed. The varnish, if you'd have seen it, well, you probably did see it. When I came in this morning, first thing, it was very orange and vivid orange. Now, I've put the varnish on, which is a matte finish varnish, and I've only put one coat on, because that's about as much as I've got in the tub. You can actually see, depending on which way you look at it, little speckles of, I'm going to say metallic. It's not metallic, but it looks sparkly. That's all I'm going to say. It looks sparkly. But now that varnish is on, I can actually appreciate the colouring, because I did think, oh, it's a bit vivid orange and in your face. Now it's dulled off. It looks like a proper rusty piece of metal. And I'm going to probably put a link, or not a link, I'm going to put a picture in, because the last time I saw rust as bad as this, if you've been to Zakynthos, and you've seen the pirate ship on the beach, that pirate ship is as rusty as this. Trust me, I've been there, seen it twice. If I'm not in Zante, I'm in Barbados. So yeah, I've seen a rusty ship and it looks like this. So I know that the effect is spot on. I'm very pleased with how it's come out. I'm going to move the camera and just show you something else, because as you know, you can clearly see I've taken the tapes off. Now the tapes are off around the top, and just let's point it out there, down on the green, and can you see the green up there? When I took the tapes off, I went round with some just touch up of the paint. I've cut in neatly. You'll be pleased to know that I didn't need any tape to cut in back with. I take the tape off, and across the top I'm going to give some more praise to Patryk and supply me with that sealing paint, because touching in with that with one coat, the opacity coverage has covered any little bits of the, say, the rust effect that might have been touching the ceiling, the oxide that just might have crept across that edge. I've cut it in neatly, and I'm going to say it's very politically correct. Blind, and I'm going to say it's not very politically correct, but a blind man on a galloping horse isn't going to be too critical with the way that line is cut in there. It is, do you know what, Alex Paints, if you see him on the YouTube reels, one trick pony. I'm sick of seeing cutting in reels. That's cutting quite sharp, so I'm quite happy with that. Even where I've taken the tapes off, which were just down the door edge, oh, let's get you there, I can't point, just down the door edge, they've all pretty sharpened up as well. So all in all, I'm very pleased with this, and I'm going to even say to you, give us some comments, give us some likes, give us some subscribes, everything. If you want to give me super thanks, I much appreciate that as well. If you want to see more content like this, because I do like doing this sort of thing, and there's not always the opportunity to do it, but the way this has come out, I think you would have confidence in doing it yourself after watching this video. And if you want to see more content like this of doing something a bit specialist, that you can then go and try it yourself, because you'll watch the video and this is quite a good video to learn from. This effect, it's just, there's painters and there's decorators, and then there's the decorators that can just go that above and beyond. And I'd like to think I'm there, aren't I? Am I one of them above and beyond painters and decorators? I'm not sure, but let's get a close up on this before I just wind it up. You've got that texture there. I don't know whether you can see it. You've got that 3D texture. And as I said in the earlier part of the video, if you wanted to stop at the Oxyd level and not go to the 3D Oxyd, you could have done. But we have got a texture to that surface that I'll say is second to none. What would I do differently next time round? I'll be honest, I'll probably make sure I've taped it up first. Now I know how the material feels. On a bigger area, I probably won't go so heavy with the 3D Oxyd, but I wanted to try it and it does give a very nice effect. The troweling action, I told you, don't just scrape it like you're doing filling up with a filling knife. You make sure that you keep it flat to the surface, and the flat to the surface, if you can see that, does give it a very nice, can you see that? Very nice 3D effect without it looking like you've just gone round with a filling knife and scraped it. But all in all, thank you very much to iconicwalls.co.uk, Patryk for reaching out to me, and hopefully you like the effect. I love the effect. I think in this front entrance it's really set it off. It's something different, and you've probably got some videos coming up at the side of me now while I'm winding up. That with the one coat of varnish is plenty. You don't need to give it a second coat. I'm very happy with that finish. Watch those videos. Thanks for listening to me. I know it's been a long one, but the results speak for themselves.